What's up guys, Jaden Irwin here. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. This is part 7 of the Sapling crash course. So if you're following along, that's great. I know this is becoming more of an actual course than a crash course, but I promise we're at the end of this as far as all the concepts that Sapling introduces or reintroduces in its own way. This last piece, I wouldn't say this is the last part necessarily, but this last piece to wrap your mind around is called Islands Architecture, or Sapling Islands as we're calling them. And you'll see that there's a little visual on the landing page for Sapling where you can see there's this concept of a web page. And then there's these little islands of interactivity where you could imagine this would be something like the navigation for your nav bar, or it could be like a little left navigation where you have some JavaScript that's running specific parts of that. Like if you look at our docs, and open the docs, you'll see as you scroll through, it highlights the specific heading that you're on. Obviously, you need some kind of JavaScript to do that. This would also be an island over here where you can search for docs. So if you click on that, it'll open a search. You can start searching for things. So this is not a new concept. This is actually something that was originally posted. I wouldn't say originally, but it was popularized from Jason Miller, I believe his name is. He's the creator of Preact. And you can look through this article. It's been around for a while, since 2020, and he explains this concept of islands and Astro, Preact, Fresh. There's so many frameworks out there now that have really popularized this concept of progressive hydration through islands. But Sapling takes its own, it does its own take on this. If you go to the Sapling docs and you go to Sapling Islands on the left, you can read through how that is enabled. That's actually very easy to turn on inside of a Sapling project or a Sapling layout. It is, in fact, right there on the layout, just enable islands true. So that's already turned on. If we go back over to our crash course code, there's enable islands right here of true. And what that does, so let's just go ahead and get this running again. Dino task dev. What that does is it will automatically include the styles and the single CDN script that you need for Sapling Islands. So you can see right here, there's a script type module, sapling-is.land. So a fun little URL that I found for Sapling Island. But if you right click on that, open a new tab, you'll see this is a very small script. It's nothing to really write home about. What this does though, is it lets your web component, what we're doing in a web component of islands, it lets that work. We'll talk a little bit more about how that functions in a second, but yeah, so it's already on in our project, enable islands true. And then the other piece that you also need it to include is this style tag right here, sapling-island. That's the HTML tag, the custom element. There's display contents, right? So that lets the islands just display its children without any special styling or anything like that. So let's just go ahead and talk about kind of an example of what is an island, a Sapling island specifically. How does it work? What's the point of it? And really one of the best ways to visualize this is one of the examples that we already built. So if I go over to the examples repository for Sapling, this is just a big mono repo of a bunch of examples using Sapling in different contexts with different features, different tools. Feel free to take a look at that. I think it's one of the best learning resources out there actually, is just to look at how would you use Sapling with this tool. Obviously, because of JSX and Hono recently becoming the foundation of Sapling, there's still some room for updating a lot of these, but the concepts remain the same, and really most of the code stays the same too. But let's go ahead and jump over to our Sapling Island example. And I already have it loaded here, but I will link it below. It's in that mono repo. There's the Sapling Island example. So we're going to do dino task dev. And just to break down this code really quickly in the example, it's Hono app. It's a web page that loads in that Sapling Island. We have Sapling display contents. And then we could obviously be using the enable islands true, but we're not right now. We're just doing a manual script and then that style tag. And the reason for that is this piece right here, so we can actually see that an island was hydrated with the JavaScript. So let's just go ahead and open this localhost 8080. And you'll see here, we've got these little islands with the red borders around them. And I can make things a little bit bigger too. So this is an island that will hydrate when the width is greater than 1024 pixels. So this one is already hydrated. And if we were to inspect that, I can also make that a little bit bigger. Inspect this particular element. We have a sapling island component, loading equals min width 1024 pixels. And then you see that hydrated right there on that custom element. So that particular island is hydrated. You might have noticed too, when I brought up the inspection window, it brought this down below 1024 pixels. So this one hydrated. And then after an island is hydrated, it's been hydrated, right? It loads in whatever the status is. If it needs to load in scripts, if it needs to load in resources, it could be really anything. That's a cool thing about the way that these islands are architected. You could load in CSS from an external source. You could load in JavaScript from an external source, or just a local JavaScript function or JavaScript script file if you wanted to. But let's go ahead and refresh. So you'll notice that top one now, because it is greater than, or it's less than 1024 pixels, the first one is not hydrated, but the second one is hydrated because of that refresh. And if we move the page wider, I think we aren't quite there. Yeah, so still a little bit too low. If I close that, there you go. We've got a hydrated island. Another really useful way to use these is for visible, right? So like, I don't want this to actually load until the page is, or until the island is visible on the page. So if we click here to see 1,000 islands, as I scroll through, you're going to see these are all dotted, right? And you can't really tell that these are hydrated or not hydrated because it's hydrating so quickly. But if we inspect the page and start scrolling down, we should be able to open up this div with a bunch 1,000 islands in it. And let's make things over here a little bit bigger so you can see it. So if I keep scrolling down, these are all hydrated, right? But down below the fold, so below where we are at, those are not hydrated. So if you watch what happens, let's scroll down. We'll just select one of those. See, as I'm scrolling, those are hydrating in, and you can keep scrolling down. You can see it's very fast. You're not really getting a performance bottleneck with 1,000 islands right here. And then you get to the bottom and there's some confetti. It's nice and fun. Proves that JavaScript function didn't load the confetti until you got to the very bottom of that last island. This is not a new concept. If this is new to you, that's okay. But yeah, this is our implementation of islands. And if you look at the code, it's very simple. So you have a sapling island right here. You have loading equals, which we talked about that, right? So this will not hydrate until this loading value is matched. We have different options, right? We have loading on load. So this will hydrate as soon as the page loads. So we'll wait until that on load event happens before it hydrates that particular island. And then this one will wait until the page is idle to hydrate that particular island. And then the last one would be visibility, right? So this one will not load until it is visible. Very simple and straightforward. And if you go to the 1,000 island page, 1,000-island, you can scroll down and you can see that this is creating 1,000 copies of this particular sapling island loading visible. So it's 1,000 islands, and it waits until that particular island that you're looking at is visible to hydrate that particular island. And what is hydration, right? So hydration, this is a great example right here. The very last one is that confetti, right? The very last island is that text with the confetti that pops, that we saw pop off. And we can go back and do it again just because it's so fun. I'm already at the bottom of the page. Let's refresh, scroll all the way down. There you go. There's the confetti, right? So that did not pop off until we got to the bottom of the page, until it was visible. If you look at the code, we have sapling-island loading visible, and we have a template tag. What's a template tag? A template tag is a tag, it's an HTML tag that maybe you haven't heard of before, but they are used in a lot of places. A template tag essentially lets whatever is inside of it be in the document, but not loaded on the document, if that makes sense. And these are my favorite because of the way these sapling islands are so performant and so simple. This is my favorite part about Sapling, to be honest. So you have these template tags, and whatever is inside of that template tag, it does not load until the island that it is inside of is hydrated. So you can imagine this script tag could be anything. It could be CSS from another source. It could be a script tag like this. It could be an external script. So maybe imagine this code is in external source equals, right? And then slash confetti script or something like that, .js. And then it would wait until that particular island is loaded, is hydrated, for that script to load. So this is, in my opinion, this is one of the cleanest island architecture setups because it is so simple. There's just a template tag, a script inside, and then it will wait until this particular island is loaded to load whatever that script tag is. And then the rest outside of the template tag is actual HTML, right? Where you can load your Tailwind styles for those particular things. And what's also cool is you could create multiple templates if you wanted to, but there wouldn't really be a lot of reason to do that. What I would say is put everything inside of one template that you want to wait until that loads. But yeah, you could do like a P tag with an ID, etc. So the possibilities are endless of what you could put inside of the template, but whatever's in that template will not show on the page until the island that it is inside of is hydrated. Hopefully that makes sense. This is one of the best examples out there, I feel like, of islands and what they are for. Like, this is how they work. So if you have any questions, leave a comment below. I know this is a deeper concept if you're coming from just like vanilla JavaScript, but the reason why these islands are so important is because you don't want to load JavaScript on, if we go back to our original example on the landing page, you don't really want to load the JavaScript for, let's say, like that little animation, right? That animation didn't load until this island, if we inspect it, sapling island is hydrated, loading visible, right? So it did not load the animation function until this was visible on the page. So it's really useful for things like this, right? Animations that you want to be pushed further down the page that maybe have a little bit more of a hefty weight to them in terms of JavaScript. You can use it for all kinds of things, but this is one of my favorite features of Sapling is you can put islands all over the page, but it just makes your overall site faster because those islands are waiting to load the JavaScript until you absolutely need them. If you look all over the Sapling website, you're going to see that there's these islands, these little island scripts, right? So this entire piece right here it needs JavaScript for those tabs to work, right? And then the copy function. So all the JavaScript for that is in there, command tabs.js. Very straightforward. And then if we make the page smaller, you can see that we've got up at the top, we can look for another island up here for the navigation. Pretty straightforward. There's a navigation island right there. So feel free to poke around the Sapling website, take a look at the code just in the source, and see what you think. That's really it for this part. I wanted to just describe the concept. I know we're not really adding a lot of code to our blog example that we were working on. But yeah, these are the sapling islands that we've been talking about in some previous parts. And this is one of my favorite features of the framework that I built. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. We'll see you. Peace.